Bulletin Board Essentials: How to get your community interested in your hard work. This video provides a couple of tips on how to make your bulletin boards more effective. If you read the blog entry, Purpose of the Bulletin Board, then you already know how a bulletin board can actually make a significant impact on your residents. Let's begin with this important question. Ask yourself, what does it take me to stop and look at a bulletin board? If you wouldn't take the time to check out your own bulletin board, chances are your residents, who may or may not know the purpose of a bulletin board, probably won't look either. I will be providing a couple of tips, and then I'll be showing some pictures later, so just keep these in mind as we go through them. The first tip is to not have any corkboard showing. It looks sloppy, and the only eyes that pass it will be critical. Unless it's an intentional part of the bulletin board, just try and cover it up. It really shows through the colorful paper that you have on top of it. The second and one of the most important, yet easily skipped over tips, is the border. A border is an easy piece that shows the passerby that you actually finished your board and that you put some time into it. It completes the bulletin board. However, this doesn't mean you need to use a traditional four-sided border. You just need to put something up that helps the eyes focus and keeps them from wandering off too quickly. We will check out some examples of traditional and non-traditional borders very soon. Now let's talk about the info on the bulletin board. Keep it to a minimum so you can make it bigger. Chances are that the resident will spend all of 5 to 15 seconds looking at your bulletin board. You want to hit them hard and quick with relative and interesting facts, which is tough to do if they cannot read it. They need to be able to read it as they walk by to go to class or to go towards the kitchen. And the more interesting it is, the higher chances are you're going to get them to actually stop and read the smaller information on the board. Speaking of eye-catching, a nice big title can always help your cause. Consistency in font is another one of those eye tricks. If it looks too tough to read, then the passerbys will likely give up and just move on. This is fixed with being consistent and choosing fonts that aren't too complicated. Much like borders, personalized pieces show the onlooker you spent time working on your bulletin board. This could be something that you hand make solo, or something you do with the floor. It could be a fun activity that everyone participates in and has their names on their work to put it on display, even if it looks ridiculous. It may seem elementary, but college students really are just bigger and sometimes smarter versions of kindergarteners. You'd be surprised how much your residents would actually get into it. And the final tip is for only the most risk-taking and adventurous of bulletin board makers. Please have a partner on standby in case of emergency. 3D effects. Yes, that's right, student leaders. Go get MacGyver on them and use some fun craft ideas to make your bulletin board stand out. Literally. Now that we've talked about the tips, let's look at some examples. When you look at this bulletin board, what do you think? Would you stop and look at it? I know I wouldn't. It sort of looks like someone just put up backing paper and then put some flyers up, which is exactly what it is. We see flyers all the time as students. We kind of get bombarded by them. This bulletin board has so much potential. Let's see what we can do with it. But first, let's move on to this next example. So this bulletin board at least has a border. It's kind of incomplete, but it has a border. And even though it is incomplete, it kind of looks like the person who put it up didn't really care. Especially because part of the corkboard is showing from ripped paper. It sort of looks like they took down their old stuff and then put up their new stuff and didn't really bother what it would look like. This wouldn't attract my attention. which is unfortunate because it looks like the information on the bulletin board could be really relevant to me, but I'm not going to take the time to look at it because this person didn't take the time to put it up. So now we have a complete bulletin board border and a little bit of rhythm of the information, but it still looks sloppy. They didn't even cut the extra edges off of the backing paper. Think, what are some things that we could have done to spice up this bulletin board just a little bit to show a little bit more effort? Think back to our tips. Maybe a nice big title, or maybe synthesize the information and make it bigger so people actually get attracted to looking at it. Okay, now we're getting there. A pre-made bulletin board that is set up nicely, has a clean border, and coordinates in color. It's pretty nice. And although pre-made bulletin boards are there to help in a pinch, they're only there to help in a pinch. You still need to spruce it up a little bit. You have to catch their attention. So maybe putting some backing paper behind the pre-made information, or cutting it up and setting it up differently so the S and the U and the R and the V is all in one line instead of having it separated like that. We understand that you're busy as student leaders, but we still can't do the work for you. You have to do some of it yourself. Now look at this one, a really interesting border, and although it's still traditional, it uses colors very nicely. But look at the setup. This interesting border isn't enough. We still need to put the information in some sort of readable fashion. This is a lot of information to take in with only 5 to 15 seconds to read. If you're passing by to use the restroom or just going to your room after a long day at work or a long day of classes or some time in the lab, would you stop and read this? Probably not, regardless of how neat the bulletin board border is. So this is the last bulletin board that I'm going to be looking at with you and giving you advice. This one has pretty much everything that we talked about. It has a beautiful, beautiful big title that's really, really relative and really important to the students, right? Everyone could use a little bit of finals advice. And the colors, they are awesome, they coordinate. And the information mixed with the pictures is all really well placed. They even have borders behind the information to make it stand out a little bit more. Besides missing a border, this bulletin board is pretty neat. It caught my attention. Did it catch yours? Would you stop and read it? Now, the rest of these examples were chosen to help stimulate your creativity. Pay close attention to the borders, coordination, the setup of information, and then of course the 3D effects. But then think how you would change it. Use the ideas that catch your eye, then expand on them to make your own bulletin boards. Good luck in your bulletin board making adventures. You really do have the opportunity to reach out to students by simply putting a little bit of attention into a bulletin board.